our Lord God. From Isaiah chapter 55, verses 1 through 9. Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and he who has no money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Hearken diligently to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in fatness. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear that your soul may live, and I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. Behold, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader, and know not that nations that knew you shall run to you because of your Lord your God, and of the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the righteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have mercy on him, and to our God, for he will be abundantly pardoned. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This is the word of the Lord.
During this next hymn, we would invite all the children and middle school students to leave the service and go to their own programming. We just got back from 7 days in Puerto Rico. We landed less than 24 hours ago, and we are here to tell you a few stories from that experience this morning. Jeff Comstock spoke at the 8 o'clock service and said he felt like he was ad-libbing a little bit. I think that's fair to say. We are all still in processing mode. So I'm going to start this time of meditation with scripture from Jesus' baptism. Jesus' baptism is the moment that leads us into Lent. It's the moment, it's the event that drives Jesus into the wilderness. And then the one of whom John spoke, the all-powerful Jesus, came to the Jordan from Galilee to be washed by John. At first, John demurred. He said, "I need to be cleansed by you. Why do you come to me?" And Jesus responded, "It will be right, true, and faithful to God's chosen path for you to cleanse me with your hands in the Jordan River." John agreed, and he ritually cleansed Jesus, dousing him in the waters of the Jordan. Jesus emerged from his baptism, and at that moment, heaven was opened, and Jesus saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming upon him, alighting on his very body. And then God said, "This is my Son, whom I love. This is the apple of my eye. With him I am well pleased." This scene is usually depicted by three figures: John the Baptist, Jesus, and God. And yet, I recently became aware of the fact that it occurred in a crowd, in a multitude. That scene on the banks of the Jordan River was Jesus coming and seeing all the men and women who had showed up to be baptized by John. And Jesus, who's described as the all-powerful, he didn't stay comfortable in his privilege and his power on the outside. Instead, he stepped into the crowd and he asked John to baptize him. He was one with many. And that was the moment in the Gospels when God said, "Oh, you are my Son. You are my beloved, and I am well pleased." And I'm reminded of that invitation to be with, to step into, and to move away from positions of power and privilege and to step into the allness. And that being the moment when God can come and tell us, "You are my beloved." And so today we're going to share these stories of our experience in Puerto Rico, moving into spaces to be with others and to share in the belovedness of God.
I can't tell you how wonderful it is to look out there and see all your familiar faces that I've missed somewhat. And I'm also very happy that Ava led with that passage. Because our very first full day, we decided we had two options. We could go to a local church and not understand anything that was going on, but we could be worshiping with the other people in the church. Or, let's go to the beach and we can be sitting there with all this beautiful nature around us and the blue sky and the puffy clouds and the sound of the waves crashing and talking about baptism in the water. And she also read us a scripture. We were talking about love, and that's why we were there. And everybody knows 1 Corinthians chapter 13, but anybody ever think about what happened before that chapter? So she read us chapter 12, and I just want to read one verse from that, which says, because we were talking about what gifts we were going to bring. There are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are varieties of service, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of working, but it's the same God who inspires them all in every one of us. And each one of us had a different gift to bring to this trip. And so this was the beginning of us kind of moving together and getting to know one another. And it actually, in my mind, we were coming there to work, and we were going to be helping these people. But actually, I felt like it was more like a retreat, a spiritual retreat for me. Getting to know these people and the talks that we had at night, our group meetings, and water was my thing. At the end of our worship service that day, she invited us to step into the water and really think about what we were here for, but if there was something like weighing on us, to let it go. And we all waded out into the water like Jesus did. We had an ocean instead of a river, and the waves were coming in, and the waves were going out. And Karen mentioned that she felt when the wave came in, she inhaled, and when it went out, she exhaled. And you could just feel this calm peace come over you. And whatever, I think everyone felt the same way that I did, but I could let it go. And so I didn't have this burden that I felt like I'd been carrying around for so long. Could inhale and let it go. And on our last day that we were there, a group of us went snorkeling. And just to see the beauty, the fish, we saw this beautiful spotted eagle ray, and just floating in the water, the waves were taking us, and the water was just renewing, revitalizing, and taking us along with them on this journey. And so that was my part, water, and Ava's leadership, and Elise. They were wonderful, and I will take that with me forever.
Good morning. Boy, my head is spinning. I just feel like there's so many emotions, so many thoughts, so many beautiful meditations and visions that just keep penetrating through my head, and I tried writing things down and I just couldn't, so bear with me through this. We had a daily evening meditation, and we covered a lot of wonderful things, and I kept saying, God, what am I going to speak about? What is going to be my meditation? We talked about gratitude and love and acceptance, and God spoke to me, and it was very clear, resiliency. And it was like the light got turned on. It was a moment of pure enlightenment. And I looked up the definition, and it says the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and tough times. The ability, it says substance, but I have prefaced it to say people, to spring back from those difficult times. And it was so true. From the beginning, our purpose in our going to Puerto Rico was to help people whose lives had been totally turned upside down, losing their homes, losing possessions. However, they're resilient. They stayed, and you could see it through their rebuilding and their recovery process. They are a proud people, and they are proud of their homeland and their communities. And to be part of that was just so gratifying. I will say this, talking about resiliency, Elise and Ava arrived, when we arrived in San Juan on Saturday, they had reserved 2 SUVs, I think, and 3 vehicles. And that reservation had had disappeared. And so in the light of being there in San Juan, they were able to get 3 other vehicles, and we were soon on our way to Umico for our first marriage. Again, the resiliency of people to overcome difficult times. We were divided into teams, and I was fortunate to work with Scott Brooks and Nancy, and we were at a house. We were all very far away, but kind of in the same area. And the resiliency of these people is, like, who are you people moving into their neighborhood and their homes and whatever? Which brings me to the next part that I felt was a sense of love. And love comes from the Greek word eros. And it's an intense emotion experienced by people, which includes trust, romance, understanding, listening, overcoming, and value. And we were at Nancy, Scott, and I worked at the home of a man named Alex, who had just moved there 6 months before. I'm very demonstrative, and of course the first day I go right up, shake his hand, and give him a great big Vermont hug. And he was kind of taken back, but all of a sudden this smile came over his face. And so that became my daily morning routine before we started our work on the rooftop. But it was also a sense of love throughout our group team, for each team, for our community, from First Church as being disciples down there. There was a sense that we had a purpose, and we had love, and we had caring. And that's what we brought into our daily work, into our daily activities, our daily travels, our meditations. Our travels, I found a great sense of love as we traveled early in the morning because we were up and on the road at 6 a.m. I felt God's love as I watched the sunrise and as we watched the sunset. I felt a sense of love when I would be up on the rooftop and I would go down and I would talk with Alex. He knew about as much English as I knew Spanish because I had taken French since 7th grade. But I will tell you, the power of love and the power of resilience. Each day he gained another 1 or 2 words of English and I learned a little bit more Spanish. So our conversations became a little more fluent. But the power of love in smiles and in care, in hugs, in handshakes, was definitely within our community. I also felt God's love as I remember being a Friday. I was in the rainforest in El Yunque National Forest, and to be up there in the foliage and the water, listening to the animals as they sang their hymns of praise, and to be able to look out and know that our friends, you could see the beach, the tropical oceans, and know that they were there, was a sense of God's community. We were all there. Didn't matter what part of the island we were on. And I found that in the grounding, the ebb and flow of the tides. God's love was prevalent. God was with us, loving us, caring with us. And I would like to just close with a verse from Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, and I'm going to pluralize it. We are able to do all things through Christ, who strengthens us. And I have found through this group behind me and in the congregation and who went with us, we were a community. And through Christ's love, we were able to accomplish more than I could ever have imagined. Thank you.
Good morning. I feel like I'm part of the comic relief. Everyone up here has these wonderful little notes and everything, and I have a tissue. And anyone who traveled with us would know I'm definitely one who wears my heart on my sleeve. I wore it straight across my chest the entire time. I spent 2/3 of my time in tears going, oh, it's beautiful. But it really was. We had members of our church that have been with us for years. We have members that have recently joined us. It was a special blessing to spend time with Bobby. Bobby and I taught Sunday school 25 years ago together. So we have some back history, but never ever got to the point of passing beyond the church boundaries and get into that personal one-on-one communication. And we had a great time, and we all learned something new. And as every trip, what goes on in Puerto Rico stays in Puerto Rico. We ended up with a couple of little themes for ourselves. PR 2.0, based off the first trip, and we had a little motto that goes with it, but it's not one I can say over a church microphone. But as the girls have talked about, there's the resiliency and water seem to really be a theme of what we came across from the very beginning. What sent us down there were torrential storms, hurricanes, that tore things apart. Yet here it was we were on top of roofs spraying water to clean things up, to begin again. We had 4 different homes that we were working on. We were divided into teams throughout the trip. We had 3 cars and 4 houses, so you do the math. We had a lot of backtracking and running the roads. I think we determined by the time our trip had finished in 9 days, each of our vehicles had gone just over 900 miles. So we're talking 2,700 miles of roads that our 3 vehicles went from port to port and coast to coast, up mountains and down mountains and around roads that were no wider than our cars because the other halves were still washed out. But through it all, everything from the homes to the individuals we met, to ourselves, to our vehicles, to the food that we were eating, there was a resiliency to rebuild and to see God's love shine through on all of this. The woman whose home I worked on, along with Donald, he and I were working on a home, was a lot smaller than the other 3 that everyone was working on. But the one that we had, the woman was by herself. She has 4 children, but all of them had left to come to the States to try to find a job because what they were doing for a profession was no longer a viable profession for them. So her home had holes in the roof where the concrete had broken down as far as the rebar. So every time it rained, she had water pouring into her home. So we were able to get concrete, patch 4 good-sized holes in her roof, go through and caulk all the cracks. And so she had very, very little to offer anyone, but she had this fabulous mango tree in front of her home. So we were washing these great big mango pits off from her roof that were even blocking up what little PVC pipes she had for drainage up there. And as the week went on, the first day she gave me one because I had spotted it and kind of went, ooh, very nice. I love mangoes, it just smells so good, so right. And by the end of the week, when we left, she gave Donna and I a bag with like 12 mangoes in it for everyone in our group, even though she's only met the 2 of us. So needless to say, when we had the end of the week kill the cooler mode and we're emptying out our refrigerator, we put this little smorgasbord together. There was like 3 or 4 of us all working on chopping and slicing and dicing, and we put this amazing mango salsa together. You can tell the background's food here, right? Which we did very well as well. But we put that together as part of our breakfast when we were doing all that, and said a prayer for Santa, who gave us all of the mangoes. And this was her way of giving back to us, because that's what she had to offer, which was more than some, and and it was an absolute blessing to be there, and to think that this all started with torrential rains and waters that came from heaven, and here it is, we're washing things down to start anew all over again with more water. It just really came full circle for us in more ways than just saying, oh, we had a great time and we met 12 nice people that we traveled with, and we all became closer, which we did, which was wonderful. But to think that it goes so much further than that, that I hope we left a mark, and that their mark that they left on us goes forward as well. Thank you.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Me llamo Elise. So I'd like to share a little bit of the day in the life that we enjoyed on our experience. So as you've already heard, there were 4 houses. The morning looked like waking up at 5 a.m. Many people needed many cups of coffee, which also led to pit stops along the way, trying to find gas stations with bathrooms as we headed to our work sites. So we would start our day at 5, leave the house at 6 a.m., and then we had a solid 2-hour drive to our work sites. So we typically arrived on location at House 1 at 8 a.m.-ish, depending on if you did a McDonald's run or not. And at that first house, all cars and groups convened, and we would drop off supplies, drop off the work team, and then head to House 2 and do the same. So we would have a caravan, dropping off at House 1, assessing, driving to House 2, dropping off supplies, assessing, going to House 3, and again 4. When all this was said and done, it was often 10 a.m. So we had already been up since 5 a.m., 10 a.m., and we're just getting started on the actual work of the day. So as you can imagine, it required great patience, planning, and teamwork to make every day flow appropriately. So, look at my notes here. So by day 2, we had done this once before. We had driven to all 4 locations, and we had dropped GPS locations in our phones so that we could pin each house location and actually get back to it again. With the damage with Maria, there aren't many street signs, there aren't stop signs, there aren't stop lights. It makes those hours of traveling quite complicated, and we relied heavily on our cell phones and those GPS coordinates to get back to our locations. So as we arrived at House 1 on our second day, I thought, my group and I should just take our supplies and head to our house and get to work. As you can imagine, if you're not arriving to your house until 10 or 11 a.m., the heat's starting to build. It is a short time frame that you want to be up on that roof in the heat of the day with the humidity, with us Vermonters who are not used to that heat and humidity. So I said to my group, let's grab our supplies here at House 1, use our GPS coordinates, drive directly to our house with 6 50-pound containers of paint. Someone in the group gave me the really good advice to watch out for potholes, because with 6 50-gallon containers in my trunk, those potholes were going to be pretty ugly. So we headed to our site, and my team consisted of Bobby Hosell, Karen Dewar, and I thought to myself, I think I will be able to get these gallons on the roof. I think I was pretty overconfident in my abilities. At the same time, I thought, God will find a way. This is likely a really great opportunity to ask for help for someone else. So we arrived at site. Karen Dewar's got some muscles. Unloaded all of those very heavy paint cans. And I walked up to that ladder, and I looked at it. And right about that moment, Rosa, our homeowner, came out, and she stood about right here next to me. She looks up, she looks at me, and I did the universal language of, and then she started doing this, and I got tissed. I thought, oh no, now the pressure's on, Rosa's standing right here, I need to get on the roof and get my team going and get them working as quickly as possible before the heat really gets to us. And I took 1 step up the ladder, and I took 2, and that was it. I knew I had met my match, and I could not physically do that. So I looked at Rosa, she looked at me, and without saying a word, she started going door to door on the street to find a neighbor to help us. She came back with a strapping young man who introduced himself as Dennis, and then he very quickly said, Dennis the Menace. And we all had a good laugh. And he created a pulley system with ropes, and he got the paint and the sealant coat up on that roof. And then he proceeded to ask us each our age. I don't know what he was saying about our group, but I would like to believe that he was very impressed that the 3 of us were going to be doing that work. And then he said something about muscles, and I said, again, universal language, We got this, Dennis the Menace. We can do this. So why tell that story? What does it mean to me? You know, it really means to me that so often in life, we have a really hard time asking for help. I can say the first day that we were there, Rosa was very reserved, and I can only imagine how she must have felt having 3 strangers come to help her and to not be able to communicate with her. But she gave us that privilege, that opportunity of helping, which meant so much to each of us. And Dennis the Menace, he was thrilled to help us. You could see it in his face. And it was a true life lesson of we are so concerned with what others might think of us if we ask for help, how it might look to others. What are they thinking? Should I ask for help? Am I bothering them? And I think more often than not, what I really appreciate about this church community is that we ask each other for help when one is sick, when one is in need. And so I just want to take that theme and encourage us to do more in this church family, that we ask each other, whether it's something small or big, that we really lean on each other. That was what God was really teaching me on this experience. Thank you.
The good thing about being last is I can be short and sweet. And I'm taking my glasses off so that I can read. It also makes it so I can't see you. To continue my part of this experience, I take you into the rainforest of Puerto Rico. And if you would like, you can close your eyes and try to imagine what I'm saying. As we enter the rainforest, we hear the sound of water from a waterfall as it makes its way down the mountain. I never knew Puerto Rico had mountains, and they're beautiful, almost like ours. As we approach the next waterfall, we see and hear the water as it makes its way into a man-made pool that was once a much-used swimming pool. We continue up a stone and concrete trail, about 2 feet wide, up the mountain and through the rainforest. The first step we get to was more than I thought I could do. I thought, I'm never going to make it up this mountain. We touch the foliage on each side as we're walking up the trail, and we see many shades of green everywhere we look. It's lush. The sun is coming through, hitting the leaves, beautiful. Bright colored flowers, and the sounds of frogs and birds are heard as we make our way slowly, and I mean slowly, up the mountain. We notice that the rainforest is resilient as it recovers from the immense destruction of the hurricane that made its way through so much of Puerto Rico. The 3 of us going up the trail also noticed that we are resilient, probably me more than the other 2, as we challenge our abilities to complete this difficult climb. At the beginning, the sign said that it was a difficult trail. Okay, I haven't hiked for many years. Thinking about my struggles along the path makes me realize that the real struggles are those of the people of Puerto Rico. As they pick up the pieces of their lives after this hurricane, many of the people of Puerto Rico that we meet have a quick smile, and they are very willing to help us. They often try to translate and tell us stories and you bring the ropes so we can pull the buckets of sealing up. They may have little, but they gave what they could. The Puerto Rican people are truly a resilient